Honey, I'm home. I missed you guys. Hey, girl gang. Hey, I'm so pumped to be back with season six. So, woohoo! So glad you're here. And I mean, it was such a nice break, but it's always good to be back on the podcast. I can't believe we're in season six. Like, what? How did we even get here so fast? So, if you're new around here, welcome to the Healthy by Heather Brown podcast. This is the season six trailer, plus a laying out the basics podcast episode with Eric and I that I will tack on to the end of this trailer. This season, we're going to be talking about one of the most important parts of life, your marriage. So, whether you're newly married, years in the journey, or hoping to prepare your heart for a future spouse, this season is for you. I'm really hoping that you will leave every single episode feeling encouraged, finding joy as always, and that you can always look at me as your online bestie, your big sis, and always reach out to me on Instagram if you ever have any questions on at Healthy by Heather Brown. If you are new here, like I said, I am Heather Brown, and for over 12 years, I've been helping busy moms become the healthiest, most confident version of themselves in mind, body, and spirit. And we believe health is about more than just what's on the scale or on your to-do list. It's about honoring God, your relationships, and of course, yourself. And let's be real, marriage plays such a huge role in that, which is why I was really amped when I felt like the Lord just put it on my heart that that is what this entire season should be about. So this season, we're focusing on how to build a thriving marriage that strengthens your health in every area. A connected, intentional relationship, as we know, impacts your mental clarity, your physical energy, and your spiritual growth. So many things, y'all. So here's what you can expect this season. You'll hear from incredible experts, real life couples, who share practical tips on how to resolve conflict in a healthy, God centered way, answer several of the questions that you guys submitted that you wanted to see us cover on this season, building deeper intimacy and trust, even the busiest seasons, supporting one another's physical and mental health, setting boundaries with technology to protect your connection. And of course, Eric Brown and I will be back in the marriage corner. So, that, in case you're not familiar, is at the end of each episode. Typically, Eric and I will do a little 10 to 15-minute segment where it's just us two chatting about whatever fun question that Eric has come up with for us that episode. So, we'll share real life lessons, funny moments, and how we're growing in our own relationship. And then, of course, we usually end up talking about the Sunday reset on here a lot. During your Sunday reset this week, I want you to think about how you can be intentional in your marriage. Maybe it's a date night, praying together, or simply asking, how can I support you best this week? Those small intentional actions can strengthen your connection and set the tone for your week ahead. And who doesn't want more intentionality in their life? So let's make it happen, girl gang, together. Next up, you'll get to hear a special treat from Eric and me. At the end of this trailer, we're tacking on a previously recorded episode that was from way back, I believe, in season one, that's packed with laughs and real talk. Eric and I dive into some fun and meaningful topics like what. It made me laugh when I was coming up with this because it kind of rhymes. But what a black eye and thick thighs had to do with marriage, how men and women relate to one another. So, you want to think about hallways and rivers. That's really fun. I can't wait for y'all to learn about that concept. It blew my mind when our premarital counselor talked to me about that. The story behind our wedding song, the power of positive encouragement in marriage, and how it relates to body image and self esteem. This conversation is one of my favorites because it's full of heart and humor, while also, of course, like we love to do here, diving into the deeper connection between your health and your marriage. Now, if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. That truly does make such a difference. It means that this podcast will automatically download to your phone and whatever your favorite streaming platform is, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other type of deal. Hit that follow button if you have not already so that you don't miss a single episode this season. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Healthy by Heather Brown for behind the scenes moments and more tips for your mind, body, and spirit health. Please, please, please leave me a 5-star rating every time you open this podcast app that you're listening in. And you can do that today, right now. Please do. Also, make sure you write me a review. When you go over to Instagram, you'll find out that I'm doing lots of podcast giveaways over these next 2 weeks. And to be entered to do that, you will need to be writing a review. I'm giving away so many different prizes, cash prizes, like really, really fun stuff. Some of my favorite things Eric and I want to use to bless you and some of your families over the coming days. So please do that for us. Go to Instagram, make sure you enter to win. And then thank you, thank you, thank you for being here, Girl Gang. I love you so stinking much. And I'm just so excited for what this episode and then even what this whole season might bring for you and your marriage. Eric and I will be very intentionally praying for you guys and your marriages. And I'm ready for you to jump into this next special episode with Eric. So get ready to laugh, learn, and be encouraged. And with that said, I will say a quick prayer for us as we journey into this season on marriage. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to serve these women and their husbands who will probably tune in to some of these episodes that they share with them. Lord, I just ask that you would go before this season and truly bring the women, the couples, the husbands, the growth groups, the Sunday school classes, and even those maybe in counseling for a struggling marriage, bring them these podcast episodes that they need to hear, Lord. I truly believe that you have gone before this season. You've gone before me. You've gone before the guests. And Lord, you have picked out specific episodes that you know specific couples need to hear. And you've prepared the hearts of these guests to speak into their heart, to maybe help soften their hearts in a way that maybe their spouse can't currently. God, I just know that you are for marriage. We know that you designed marriage to show us how you love the church. You always say that the church is your bride, and we want to honor you in our marriages, and we want to honor you in our parenting, and we want to honor you in the way that we live our day to day lives. God, I just ask that you be in every single woman's home or car or outside with her as she's walking and listening to this episode. Lord, make an impact on her, on her marriage, and just empower her to share it with the friends or the family members or the spouse that she needs to. I ask all these things in your name. Amen. Woohoo! Another episode of Just Eric and I. So amped for it, babe. Are you ready?
We back again.
That's right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about healthy relationships and what those look like. Eric, you have really good perspective, I feel, about this from all different walks of life because of all the people you come in contact with day to day at the hospital and just different things. So actually, will you share a little bit just about your job first so people know, like, why are you at the hospital? What are you doing?
Sure. So I believe this is the season as far as physical health is concerned.
Yes.
I am a cardiovascular nurse practitioner. I primarily work in an inpatient setting. I do see some patients in clinic as well too, but that was not always my first profession. My first profession was actually a public auditor for KPMG. And I always tell people, they always ask me, well, why did you decide to change professions? And I kind of joke with people, and it's partly true, but I always tell people that people tend to like nurses, nurse practitioners more than they like auditors. And I would say for the most part, that is true. But honestly, I could talk about this, 20 or 30 minutes. There's a whole lot that goes into that story. But needless to say, I definitely enjoy talking to people on a daily basis about their physical health and being able to give them recommendations and help them with their overall physical health, specifically as it relates to cardiovascular issues. And yeah, I love what I do.
Yeah. And he won't brag on himself, but he's really good at it. In fact, he's so incredibly intelligent to me. The fact that you could go from accountant to a nurse practitioner, that's really completely wild. And his professor even told him, your brain works the way that the heart works, before he ever even knew he wanted to do cardiovascular health. So anyway, just wanted to brag on you for a little bit. But the first question I have for you, Eric, is how do you think healthy relationships tie into your overall physical health? Maybe even thinking about the implications of stress hormones from unstable relationships, and just the fact that typically our bodies and our minds communicate so much more than we ever think that we could. We always talk about the mind-body connection. So I feel like our bodies even know when we're safe, we're fully loved, we're fully known. We tend to thrive in those environments. But how do we work together as a couple and with other people around us to make them a reality?
So the first thing that I would say is, as far as how do healthy relationships tie into overall physical health, I would say that in today's society, when people are being pulled in so many different directions, so many different responsibilities that people have, basically it all comes back to stress and how do you manage stress in your life. And relationships can either put more stress on your everyday life, your own personal health, or relationships can do a lot to lessen stress in your life. Obviously, with stress comes increased cortisol levels, which can increase blood pressure. That gets into my special untreated blood pressure. You're talking heart failure, you're talking kidney issues. So directly, the physical health is affected that way. But as far as relationships are concerned, if you can find somebody that you can confide in, somebody that you can share your life with, somebody that is, we just talked about this recently, somebody that can accept you for who you are, all the good that comes with that and all the bad that comes with that, definitely easier said than done. But to be able to be who you are, to have that person accept your personality, there's just something so reassuring and stress relieving about finding somebody, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friendship, a mentor, a coworker. Yeah, just those healthy relationships are so key. Just having somebody to listen to you to relieve that stress. A lot of times we, as males, we definitely keep a lot of that stress internalized, but to have somebody that you can actually share your thoughts, share your feelings, and not feel judged, it cannot be stated how important that is to overall physical health.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the fact that you bring so much medical knowledge into it, babe. And I think that one thing that's really cool that I notice a lot between you and I is you kind of touched on a little bit that you may tend to bottle things up more and think like, well, actually, in our premarital counseling, we even heard from our pastor that men are typically like hallways. So a male will walk down a hallway, you open the door to work, you deal with work, and you shut the door. And then you walk down the hallway, you talk about like stuff with your kids, you open that door and you shut it, and it's not all connected. Whereas a woman is like a river. And so there's all these tributaries where like if I had a bad day at work, it might run into my river. And then the next tributary of like if Eric and I have some kind of major conversation, that flows back into the river. So I think that one thing with that of like men versus women, even in communication, that you have been so good at helping me kind of figure out is that a lot of times we can just tell when something's not right. And we'll have to say like, hey, babe, it seems like something's off. Can we talk about it? And one thing that you have been really good at telling me that I've had to learn that is hard for me is sometimes you're not ready to talk about it yet. And I think that sometimes when I am one of those, like, I just want to talk it all out now. And Eric will be like, ooh, that's probably not the best idea right now.
It is interesting, kind of what you're describing, and you described the river, that the woman goes down with all the different tributaries. Sometimes I do feel like it is whitewater rafting.
No doubt.
But along those lines, it is so difficult. It's about learning how the relationships that you have, whether, like I said, whether it's your spouse or a friendship, how different people react. Like you said, it's taken you time to realize it's okay to think about the process because like you said, you're an open book. You verbalize all your thoughts. That's how you process. Whereas I process more internally. I want to be able to say very specific things when I do speak. And neither way is good or bad. It's just how people are made differently. And learning how those relationships interact can help overall physical health. But it's very difficult to learn those dynamics sometimes.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell one quick little like nugget about us. So Eric and I's song at our wedding was actually Little Big Town's Bring It On Home to Me. And a lot of that song talks about bringing your worries and your troubles back to your person at the end of the day. And so I feel like that is one thing that has been a recurring theme through our marriage. And I'm so thankful for it. So if you haven't checked out that song, you got to check it out. And then specifically, Eric, I think it would be really cool for people to hear a couple of tips that we wish that we would have known about relationships that have helped both of us.
For sure. Do you want me to start or do you want to start with your tips?
How about I'll do one, you do one, and we'll go back and forth.
Sounds great.
Great. Okay. So the first one that I would say is Eric and I learned this in a counseling session. It's HALT, the acronym, and it's basically not to have what Eric and I typically call discussion to keep them like healthy, I guess, is if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And like Eric mentioned, I'm an external processor. And so for me, that's really good for Eric to be able to be like, hey, listen, it's late and I'm tired, and it's not going to be a productive conversation that we have unless we talk about this tomorrow. And that kind of helps, kick back in my less emotional side to be like, okay, yes, we know that to be true. And so halt is a big one for me. What's one of your tips?
So I talk about this a lot, and I may have talked about this in a prior podcast as well too, but we are very big on balance. And if I could tell anybody in a relationship, it's try and find that balance and understand also that in relationships, you're going to be out of balance emotionally, spiritually. We're specifically talking about physical health. And there's going to be times where those things are out of balance. It's very rare in your life where all of those things are in balance. But as long as you communicate in the relationship that you're in, and you can recognize when you are out of balance and verbalize or come up with a game plan to get back into balance, that is critical to healthy relationships, which then ties into healthy physical health as well too.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And actually my second tip is actually very tied in with yours. And it is about the ups and downs. So you said balance. I tend to, of course, being a woman, tend to be more emotional, I would say, than Eric. You might say that, right? Whitewater rafting.
I would never say that.
Oh, right. Genius. That's a man that's been married for 13 years, ladies and gentlemen. But I feel like a lot of times when I tend to maybe get out of balance with, let's say, my workouts or whatever it may be going on, maybe I'm doing a 45-day cleanse and I'm a little bit irrational or what have you. Eric will usually say to me in some kind of very kind way. In fact, you said this to me last night. You said, hey, I am trying to say this in the most loving way possible because I have your best interest at heart. And then you speak it. Whereas I think before, early on in our relationship, you might have said, you just need to relax. That was a key Eric Brown phrase.
That was a lot of learning. Do not, all you men out there, all the men that are listening to this podcast, all three of you, never tell your significant other to just relax. It does kind of has the opposite effect.
Yeah, it makes their blood, I'm like, speaking of physical health, it makes their blood pressure skyrocket. But anyway, I really appreciate that a lot of times Eric can take a step back when we are having some kind of discussion, and he can say to me, hey babe, I just want us both to remember that we're still on the same team. So whatever it is that we're working through or working towards, and then we maybe get out of balance or have a disagreement on, you do a really, really great job of bringing it back to, I'm on your team. I really want us to figure this out together. So remember that I love you as we're talking through this. And I really appreciate that about you.
Well, it's funny you said and mentioned that we're on the same team, because my second tip was always wanting what is best for whoever that is in your relationship. I always want what's best for you. And we talk about this a lot. You always want what's best for me. And as long as we have that same goal in mind, I know that no matter what disagreement we have, we may be looking at things from a completely different perspective. We may not agree on it, but even though you may have a different opinion, I still know deep down you want what is best for me. And that makes your disagreements that much, I would say, easier. And the relationships that I see that are not as healthy are the ones that usually one part of the relationship has lost that want for what is best for their significant other. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to get back. But it always takes constant reminding. It always takes, just, you have to think about it. You have to try. So that's very important. But I would say this is more of a lighthearted example of a tip. This is kind of a 2.5 tips.
Love it.
And it kind of goes to what we talk about. You asking questions is so important, and not being afraid to ask silly questions as well too. It creates conversation. You can't be afraid to make a fool of yourselves at time. Laughter is so good for our emotional health as well as physical health. So I would say ask silly questions, always want to learn more about your significant other. And those would be my 2.5 tips.
I love it.
I would give.
I'm always up for a half tip. It's good. I do feel like one thing that I would feel slightly remiss, just because we have had women mention this to us in the past, is you think about your physical health and emotional health and all those things in a relationship. If there is a woman that's listening to this that does feel like she's in an unsafe relationship, though, Eric and I always obviously would urge you to reach out for help. I mean, there are some things that, you know, can't be fixed. And so if you ever find yourself in some kind of bad or dangerous relationship where you feel like you might need to reach out to a domestic violence hotline or like a trusted friend, a counselor, pastor, we always want to urge that. And I think it's important that it's not something that is ignored, even though we like to talk about happy and lighthearted and funny things. We never want to ignore the hard as well, because that's life, unfortunately. But moving on to my next question for you, Eric, it is, do you feel that positive and uplifting speech, like between you and me as a couple, helps with body image and self-esteem? And what do you think the benefits are of feeling that acceptance and being supported and loved during your health journey?
So if you followed Heather before, you know that one of her best qualities is what an encourager she is. I'm a big words of affirmation guy, and Heather does a great job of affirming me. You know, even in this podcast, you've heard she's done it a couple different times, and that speaks to me. It gives me confidence. It makes me want to be a better spouse. So yeah, I just definitely think, you know, uplifting speech, positive speech. It's so easy to be negative today. You know, I would even transition this into parenting as well, too. Obviously, you know, it's so easy to be negative when you're disciplining your children, as opposed to kind of transitioning in it to make it more of a positive affirmation. But going back to relationships, yeah, I mean, just those words of affirmation, finding small things, detailed things to affirm one another is just key. I'm a big believer in the written word, so sometimes it's easier for me to write out words of affirmation or words of encouragement to Heather, you know, whether it's a note or it can be even something as simple as a text message. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot, but as long as the other person knows that you're thinking about them, that you're encouraging them, and you want what's best for them, that uplifting speech can help with your overall physical health, because, you know, you feel good about yourself, you feel confident in your relationship, you want to be your best self, you know, emotionally and physically. So all that ties in together.
Absolutely. And in fact, I know sometimes I think it's really interesting for us as women. We almost are like afraid to say what we want or what we desire. And maybe it's this way for men too. Maybe you could speak to that. But I actually told Eric this the other day. I told him, you know, babe, I know you're really busy at the hospital sometimes and you can't call me or text me all the time. But I made it a point to say, but when you do reach out and you call, or you do even just text and let me know, like, I'm thinking about you, it means a lot to me. And I know that you've had a really busy week, or you've been short staffed, or whatever is going on. But I just want to remind you that that's really important to me. And I think that I just want to encourage our listeners, if there's something that you're thinking, don't assume that your spouse knows it. You have to verbalize it, because unfortunately men can't read our minds the same way I can't read Eric's mind.
Definitely not.
I'm like, there's our 3.5 tips right there.
Not a mind reader, that's for sure.
Yes.
So I want to transition just real quick, so kind of make it a little bit more lighthearted. So we are talking about physical health and how it affects relationships, but I have a specific question as it relates to your physical fitness journey, if you will. But have you had or experienced any mistakes in your fitness journey? Maybe anything that you tried that maybe didn't necessarily work out or didn't have the results that you expected?
Well, I think you probably know where I'm going to go with this. And that was when I did the 45-day cleanse with Dr. John, my chiropractor. Holy smokes. Eric was like, babe, you know I love you. Hear me say this with the utmost respect, but you are just a little more short tempered than normal, and your maybe even just demeanor with the boys isn't what it would typically be. Like, we might want to take a step back here. And I maybe perhaps once he said that, I did realize that I was like, oh my gosh, it is like there's smoke coming out of my head sometimes for no apparent reason. And then I was like, okay, wait. And then I actually went down this whole health journey that I'll bore y'all with another time about how I did this cleanse and I didn't notice much change in my body after like really taking out coffee, caffeine, like all these different things for 45 days. So then that led me down a whole nother journey. So it was almost like a fail that led to a success. But man, I felt bad because you and the boys had to endure a lot during that. That was a fail emotionally on my part during a physical challenge.
The crash diets are definitely difficult, but I wouldn't even call it a crash diet.
It wasn't.
It was just like...
It was a cleanse.
It was a cleanse. That was difficult. That's not exactly where I thought you were going to go with that. I actually thought that you may have mentioned a while back when you were into spin classes. Do you want to kind of talk about that spin class journey?
Sure. So, am I going to go the right direction? Rein me back in if I'm not. I did spin before I taught Pure Barre.
I just think maybe you had some unintended physical
changes
that you had not anticipated. You're like, oh, this is going to be a ton of cardio.
True. I was like, oh man, I'm like sweating so much. Like, I'm really going to like lean out here. So come to find out that after probably a solid 9 months of sweating it out at spin 4 or 5 days a week, like loving life, being like, the playlist is awesome. This is so good. And then I was like, hold on, wait a minute. I think my legs might be bigger than Eric's. Whoops. Got a little bulkier than I had intended.
Yeah, I did not want to say that. It's better for you to say that than me. So, but that's where I thought you may have gone with that.
I should have, dang.
Yeah.
Now they got 2 stories instead of the one. It's all good. What about you? Do you have a good answer for this one?
So I do. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Oh.
Do you have a guess?
Probably your Whole30 flu.
It's not what I was going to say.
Oh.
Me and the Whole30 do not do well. Usually about day 11 is the worst. It is actually like the flu. But where I was going to go was, this is still involved with the gym that I go to today, Spartan Fitness.
Oh, yes,
like
it's a great story.
They offer all different types of classes, whether it's Muay Thai, kickboxing, strength and conditioning, which is what I primarily do now. But they also offer a 4th specialty, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which for a while I thoroughly enjoyed. Great workout.
Tell people what it is that are like Brazilian who?
Yeah. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, if I had to describe it to anybody, it's essentially wrestling, but, you know, with the purpose of performing different types of submissions, chokes, you know, whether it's an arm bar, anything you see on maybe like UFC. So it's a martial art and very physically demanding. And I did that about 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember this very vividly because we had just had Leighton. And I remember bringing up to you, I was like, hey, Heather, I've been training jiu-jitsu for a little while now, and I'd really like to enter this tournament.
And I was like, what? Who?
For sure. So you being the loving wife, you were like, you know what, if that's something that you want to do, then go for it. But I really, really don't want you to get injured. You know, I've seen this it seems kind of violent. And I was like, okay. Duly noted. I tried to explain to you, you know, the tapping out process, you know, and very, very safe. Well, I entered my first tournament. There was not a whole lot of people in my age and weight division, so I'm pretty sure they decided to group people of different weights and ages together. So I think I weighed in at maybe 148 pounds at that time. So I put on a few pounds since that time.
Yeah, you have.
But
Ow!
I know for a fact the first person I went against in the tournament, first ever tournament, was pushing 170 pounds, much larger guy, older guy.
Facts.
And so with jiu-jitsu, you start in a standing position, you try and perform a takedown, get the person to the ground. Well, no matter what I tried, I could not get this guy down. And eventually he kind of rushes me and he catches me with his head right above my eye, or right in my eye, and immediately I'm seeing stars, and I'm just like, something's not right. You know, I'm able to finish the fight,
Keep in mind, I'm there with baby Layton
With
watching
baby
this all
Layton.
go down. Like, what?
There's no points scored. But anyways, I get up and shortly, about 2 minutes after the fight, I am developing the worst black eye that I have ever had.
It's the worst one I've ever seen, period. It was literally red, white, and blue. It was all the colors.
It's red, white, and blue. I had basically, carpet burns on my face, from the mats. I looked like I had just been through a war, which I had been.
And he lost.
I lost. But it's also because I had a severe concussion. It took me about 2 weeks at work where I just could not remember anything. I was just like off. So my biggest fear of Heather, she's like, it's whatever you do, just don't get injured. What happens? This guy, amateur, I will call him, gives me a concussion. Long story short, that was the end of my jiu-jitsu career,
I really hope that I can find this picture of Eric to post in these show notes, because you guys, it was bad. His face was swollen.
So,
oh, wow.
But having said that is the one thing I would say. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but I would say it was something that didn't go the way that I had planned. Still great exercise, great martial art, but that's one of the things I would say from physical health didn't quite work out for me.
Yeah, not so much. I was like, well, all I have to say is that it led to a lot of ups and downs in our conversations about going back to said gym, but now Eric's back and he loves it, and I'm super thankful that he's found something that he loves and where he doesn't get black eyes all the time.
Just gonna stick with the strength and conditioning and Coach KD. So
that's right. Shout out to KD.
Yeah.
Okay, so Eric, can you think of a stressful time in our relationship that affected your physical health, and how did you overcome it, other than getting that black eye?
So a stressful
in our
time
relationship,
in our relationship
that affected your physical health, and how did you overcome it?
So I think the first thing that comes to my mind was when I was transitioning from being a public auditor to becoming a nurse practitioner. That was a very stressful time. We were still, relatively newly married, still, cutting coupons, living in a condo.
$40 a week on groceries right here.
$40 a week on groceries, some more stressors in life. But also, too, it was a great life. It was a simple life. But, just the physical stress of working as a new nurse while you're going through the master's program, and all those stressors.
Working a lot of nights, a lot of weekends.
Yeah, working a lot of nights. I would say that situation did play a role in my physical health for sure. And I would say that was probably the most difficult time in our relationship, and we can probably talk about that in more detail later on. But the way that I would say we overcame it is kind of like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. We figured out that we wanted what was best for one another, and it took a lot of difficult conversations, a lot of honesty, a lot of being humbled. And I would just say that, I would say being humble is probably the most important way to get out of those difficult situations.
That's a really interesting way that you say that. When you say being humble, can you give an example kind of what that looked like for you?
I would say it's just realizing your faults. It's realizing the blind spots in your life. I find that a lot of times when somebody brings up a fault to you, our initial reactions as humans is to be defensive. And I know for a long period of my time, and it's everybody's natural reaction, I'm still working on it, is to be defensive when you're accused of something that deep down is true. You don't want to accept it as being the actual truth and the honesty, but more times than not, the people that you have the closest relationships, they know you better than anybody else. And when they can speak that truth to you, when it's coming from a place of wanting what is best for you, it's a lot of times people will not take that. They'll be defensive. But to take a step back, be humbled, realize that what they're saying is truthful, and it's actually just being humble and being accepting of that truth it changes everything. And it's very difficult to be humble, I think, in today's society and to admit fault, take responsibility. And if you're able to do those things in your own personal life, it is going to change your relationships that you have in ways that you would not imagine.
Yeah. Oh, babe, that's so good. It's so true. I mean, I feel like Eric and I learned so much through that whole experience and through his transition, and just the roles that we both played during that time frame for each other and what we learned in it was really huge. And I would love to do an episode on that in the future. I would say for me, it obviously was after having Leighton and the stress and the trauma that put on my body and dealing with postpartum depression, which if you missed our first episode, you can go back and listen to that to hear more details. But I feel like the main way that I was able to overcome it is, I mean, unfortunately, medication did have to become involved based on what my doctor recommended for me. But also for me, it was just realizing what I had put as idols in my life. And so I think that what you said is exactly true for me as well, that I had to humble myself to realize, oh, right, I can't go and be and do all the things that I was before when I had my health at peak percent. I'm now at a 2 out of 10 on the health scale. And so I think that, I would love to go into more details in that in the future, but I had to humble myself and realize things that I had made idols in my life. So definitely lots to be learned here on physical health and our relationships and how they all can be intertwined so much. Eric, I'm really thankful that you're an awesome husband, but we hope that this encouraged you to bring up health and good conversation starters with your significant others and people that you trust in your life to help you work on humility, which is something that I think is hugely undervalued in our culture today. And also just to want to improve 1% every day. It doesn't have to be running a marathon tomorrow. So with all that said, if you found this episode useful, do us a favor and screenshot it, share it to your stories, tell us something that you learned or a question you want us to tackle in Eric's next question segment. And we look forward to seeing those on Instagram, and we'll see you next time. Hey, if you're loving the show, click that follow button on your podcast app. This will ensure you won't miss a single episode. I'll see you next time.